It's Kirk Cousins week as the Minnesota Vikings host the Atlanta Falcons at US Bank Stadium this upcoming Sunday, with this video brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino. It's funny how this has come full circle immediately after Kirk's departure. The Vikings this year are kicking damn near every set of ass that you can think of that dare stands in front of Minnesota's way. Waiting for the Detroit Lions, keeping up on pace with them, but waiting for them to slip up to have a chance to capture the illustrious number one seed in the NFC. Meanwhile, Kirk Cousins and the Atlanta Falcons, they have been every set of ass that you can think of. And if they do make it into the playoffs, playing in one of the worst divisions in football, the NFC South, I can see that division being won at 8-9. That if they do make it, they're just going to barely get in. Certainly not as a wild card. And you remember the discourse at last year's season's end? Do you sign Kirk Cousins or not to a contract extension? And amongst the fan base, it was a dead even split. It was very divided. And clearly, the Vikings made the right call. Reportedly, they made an offer to Kirk Cousins, but I think they did that out of respect, that they made him an offer that they knew he would refuse. They certainly weren't going to get into a bidding war for Cousins with the Atlanta Falcons, but they made the right call. They signed Sam Darnold. They drafted J.J. McCarthy. The Vikings, with Kirk Cousins' $28.5 million dead cap hit this year, having Sam Darnold in 2024, 23 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Kirk Cousins, 17 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. Vikings 10-2. The Falcons, they're 6-6, having a fart off between them and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Which brings me to, if the playoffs were to start today, the Vikings, who are clearly far and away better than the Atlanta Falcons, the Vikings would be the 5 seed because Detroit, they are a game up on Minnesota, and Minnesota, would have to travel to Mercedes-Benz Stadium to play the Falcons. And I understand how the playoff format has been forever. It's time to switch it up, man. Realign how seeding works. Because if you did it like how the NBA does it, where it's like, hey, seeding works regardless of what division you're in, the top 7 teams, talking about the NFL, the top 7 teams are in order based off of their record and tiebreakers. Division be damned. So if you were to take that model, the Lions would be 1. The Eagles would be 2 because they have a better conference record, even though they've played an extra game in the conference compared to the Vikings, but they would be 2. The Vikings would be 3, and the Packers would be 4. Then you'd get Washington at 5, Seattle at 6, and the Atlanta Falcons, that last spot in the NFC, they would be the 7th seed. This makes too much sense, which is exactly why the NFL will never agree to this. But from a competitive standpoint, I believe this is what is best for the sport of football. But if I were to argue with Roger Goodell and the 32 owners across the league, because I understand how they think, they only see things through a business perspective. And I can talk business. Through a business lens, this realignment would make for better TV. You would have a home playoff game at Detroit, at Philly, at US Bank Stadium, the new 12 of the NFL, and at Lambeau Field. Instead, you're not going to, right now as it stands, you're not going to get a home playoff game at US Bank Stadium or Lambeau Field. Instead, you're going to get it at Seattle with the struggling Seahawks and the Atlanta Falcons. Come on, man. Explain to me why bum-ass Mercedes-Benz Stadium with this crappy-ass team is better for business. Explain why. Oh, you're going to tell me it's because we're going to have Ludacris and 21 Savage performing at halftime. Okay. Kirk Cousins' last 3 games, 0 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 4 interceptions last week against the LA Chargers. Sam Darnold's last 3 games, 6 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, the exact opposite of one another. And I understand how, with the history of bad juju with this franchise, that stat of these two quarterbacks the last 3 games naturally would have Vikings fans thinking, oh boy, this means Kirk Cousins, he's due to finally have his great game when he's not playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But you got to shake that. This is a new era of Vikings football. The Atlanta Falcons, and talking about Kirk Cousins and how it was the right move to let him go because he literally does not move the needle. In fact, if anything, he moves the needle in the opposite direction that you want it to move because he's an expensive quarterback. So you have to sacrifice elsewhere because of this guy that doesn't change a damn thing. Last year, through the first 12 games, the Falcons were 6-6. Now, this year, through the first 12 games with Kirk Cousins, the Falcons are also 6-6. And I tell you what, Kirk, after the Vikings whoop on that ass, you and your cowardice attitude and your no trade clause can get the hell up out of US Bank Stadium. Good riddance. Sign up for a BetUS Sportsbook and Casino. Get a 150% bonus on your first deposit and a 125% bonus on your next 2 deposits up to $2,000. Just use the promo code YouTube150. The Vikings, they are 5-point favorites over the Falcons, and I'm going to take that spread all day long. The Vikings, they have the better quarterback. They have the better team. They will smash the Falcons, and I'm going to say it confidently at the risk of looking absolutely stupid at the end result. My official prediction, Vikings win 27-13. It's not going to be even close. So give me the Vikings -5 over the Falcons. Will Reichard end up playing? It seems like there's a good chance that he will practice this week. He started off as a full participant. And regardless of Reichard's status, I'm going to hammer down this take, no matter how ridiculous it may seem. Regardless of Reichard's status, you have to keep John Parker Romo. You have to keep these 2 kickers because it is more valuable keeping these 2 kickers on this Vikings roster than cutting John Parker Romo in favor of guys like Ed Ingram or at the end of the bench players who respectfully don't matter when it comes to the impact of the success of this team. It could end up biting you in the ass because John Parker Romo, he's not going to clear waivers. He has been great. Teams that are in dire kicking situations that would not think twice about picking him up off waivers, the Atlanta Falcons, the LA Rams, possibly the Eagles. Jake Elliott, he's been struggling this year, and that's in the NFC. Let's say you make it to the Super Bowl, the Baltimore Ravens with Justin Tucker. Don't let this move, this decision, as untraditional as it is to have 2 kickers on your roster, don't let this end up coming back to possibly end your season in the playoffs. And going back to the Sam Darnold situation, do you sign him to a contract extension? Talked about that on Monday. I want to expound on that. The NFL is a system league, the exact opposite of the NBA, where in the NBA, you can win just off of pure talent, even if you have an idiot coach. The NFL is the opposite. Coaching, scheme, play design matters more than everything else. Then we can talk about talent after. Nick Foles led the Eagles to a Super Bowl title with Doug Peterson. That following year, they also had a playoff run, damn near made it to the NFC Championship game in back-to-back years. And before that, he was a journeyman quarterback. Tom Brady said years ago on what was the SVP and Russillo show that if I weren't drafted by New England, I would probably be on my 5th or 6th team by now. System league. And there are a few exceptions to that rule that can shatter the mold. And I talked about this on my second channel, Double R Football. If you're not subscribed to that, or if you haven't checked it out, be sure to do so. We talk all things football outside of the Vikings, because obviously Vikings related stuff we're going to keep on this channel, but we have a great time. I'll have the link to that channel, Double R Football, in the description of this video. But there are a few examples of quarterbacks where they are the system. Sam Darnold, he's balling out, having his career best season. And although the circumstances are vastly different in a weird way, eerily, it's very similar, Sam Darnold now, to Case Keenum in 2017. The system for Case Keenum in 2017 was he had the best receiving duo in the league, as well as the #1 defense in the league. So the margin for error was so large for this guy. Sam Darnold now, the system for him is arguably the best collection of weapons, along with 3 genius coaches on this coaching staff. Kevin O'Connell with his play design, Brian Flores calling the defense, and Josh McCown as the quarterback's coach. And when I say system drives success, you look at both of those quarterbacks, Case Keenum and Sam Darnold, before they got to Minnesota, both of those situations, journeyman quarterbacks. They get to Minnesota, they have their career best seasons, and it's not even close. Case Keenum after Minnesota never recaptured that magic. And while I do believe Sam Darnold can have continued success with this team, with this coaching staff, is he really that much of a difference maker that bucks the system, costing you tens upon tens of millions of more dollars of what you're already paying him right now? I don't think so, which is why I would not sign him to a contract extension. I believe that this system will still thrive and still have success with J.J. McCarthy on his rookie deal, and that way you can spend that money elsewhere. But your thoughts in the comments section below. Thanks to the folks at BetUS Sportsbook and Casino. We'll see you next time.